Now, the insanity of the COVID era will be talked about for centuries to come. The lies, coercion, bullying, manipulation, snitching and discrimination towards the unvaccinated spawned a toxic medical apartheid. Kids' educations, businesses, the economy and relationships were also ripped to shreds at the altar of COVID authoritarianism. And here's a grim reminder of how the unvaxxed in particular were spoken about at the height of the pandemic.
For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death.
Those who haven't had jabs but could have jabs need to have a badge saying unjabbed.
It can really spread like wildfire amongst the unvaccinated groups.
So two different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is, so yep.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack, yes, come right on in, we'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy.
And the government's telling me what to do. That's right, the government is telling you what to do. Shut up, be respectful of other people, and get a vaccine.
Just despicable. Now, with the stay home, stay safe smokescreen evaporated and even Pfizer execs admitting that aspects of the vaccine, like its impact on transmission, were untested, the people responsible for all the hysteria are calling for their victims to forgive and forget. In a viral article for The Atlantic magazine, lefty US University professor Emily Oster has called for a, quote, pandemic amnesty, where we, quote, forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. She argues that we made complicated choices in the face of deep uncertainty. That sounds like Emily Oster excusing her own behaviour during COVID, including this tweet, demanding that because shaming the unvaccinated hadn't worked, they should instead be refused the right to travel, socialise and work. But Adam Brooks, I'm sorry, given we were two of the people who were absolutely the target of so much personal hatred because we stood against lockdowns and we stood up for the rights of the unvaccinated, I'm sorry, I can't just forgive and forget because so many people continued with this divisive, revolting messaging, even though the facts were not there to back it up.
At the end of the day, we were proven right. Data has been on our side. And the recent studies are on our side. You know, you don't have to be a scientist to know that. I stood against vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, school closures. You know, I put my head above the parapet. I was called a granny killer. You know, I was called selfish. I was called every name under the sun online. You know, and these people, look, I'd be very surprised if some of these media figures were not paid to say these things. They can't be that disgusting. They can't have been that.
Well, look, loads of them were getting
stupid.
so much work because they were going with that government narrative and they were on TV shows all the time. Dawn Neeson, are you just prepared to forgive and move on?
No, of course not. I'm still very angry. I think I'll always be very angry that we were constantly being fed a worst-case scenario. You know, even when there was a better-case scenario, we weren't even given it, Dan.
No, it was covered up.
Deliberately terrorised a population, and the mental health effects of this will go on for years.
And the media was in lockstep. The media was in lockstep.
Not all parts of the media were. Some of us did try to. I mean, I wrote columns throughout saying, look, you know, please stop terrorising people. And I had a heated debate with Piers Morgan on TV about the thing. Not about vaccine or anti-vaccine or anything like that, but just the terrorising of a population that were naturally terrorised.
He was one of the biggest figures.
I'll never forgive anyone who did that, ever. I'm sorry. Because people said goodbye to loved ones by remote.
Yeah.
People weren't allowed to go to funerals.
People were begging outside of hospitals to be allowed in to see a dying relative, and health professionals showed them no humanity. I mean, Ashley James, are you prepared to forgive?
I feel really upset about lockdown, and I feel like I came out a very different person because of the impact lockdown had on me.
I think a lot of us did.
I did a lot. I get upset thinking about it because of what I felt like I went through, but I did a lot of my first pregnancy and childbirth alone. And
it's just appalling.
Sorry, I didn't know I was going to get upset.
No, it's appalling, and it shows the human impact.
I feel also that I was pressured into having a vaccine because I didn't want to. My grand's terminally ill, and I was so worried that if I didn't have the vaccine, obviously I did it when I was pregnant, and obviously your first thought is always that you want to protect your child. But there was so much like anti-vax narrative that I felt like if I said that I didn't want to get it, that and then something happened to her, that I would therefore be held responsible. So what I would say that I do actually forgive and understand a lot of people that were so afraid that they were calling out for more lockdown restrictions, because a lot of people went with the evidence that they were given. And I was really scared at the beginning. I was so afraid at the beginning, especially because it coincided when I found out I was pregnant. I used to tell Tommy off for going into the newsagents to get like bits and bobs. I was like, no, we have to do one shop and try and I remember I thought it was going to be a zombie apocalypse because we were seeing dead bodies in the streets in New York. And at the time, you felt like if you were going to go to hospital, you'd go and die there. And obviously, I knew I had to go to hospital because I was going to have a baby. I feel really upset that Pfizer and all the other companies knew that it wouldn't stop the spread for the transmission, because that's why I personally did it, because I felt like I was doing it for the greater good to protect my relatives.
No, it breaks.
So yes, I can forgive the people who were scared and therefore saying things because they felt that that was the right thing. I can't forgive people like Matt Hancock, who essentially put people back in care homes to die, and now he's been handed, what, a £400,000 contract?
And was having an affair and meeting people.
And even Piers Morgan, I probably could forgive him. I know that he was a big scaremonger, but again, he was going off the information that was being fed to him. But I don't forgive people like the scientists who probably knew that it wasn't as bad as it was, and they terrified us.
Breaking the rules themselves.
And also, I had friends. Obviously, everyone has their different personal situations, and my situation is no near as bad as other people's. But I had a friend whose dad has terminal cancer. She didn't see him for that whole period, and she lives on her own. Like, she was basically suicidal, completely on her own, afraid of dating, and couldn't see her father. Like, how do you forgive what people like that go through?
Spy B and the nudge units have a lot to answer for. I'm upset seeing Ashley upset here. They did a job on everyone, right? And Laura, who was here earlier, her book, fantastic.
Yes,
you know, A State of Fear.
Exactly. And the thing is, a book like that, though, which actually I was interviewed for and I'm quoted in that book, we did the interviews for that book in early 2020.
Yeah.
You could know if you were prepared to look.
Yeah.
If you were prepared to block out the propaganda, you could know. But Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your story, because I found that really emotional too.